Allegations of police corruption are nothing new in Mexico, but it's rare to see federal officers face off against each other.
Many nations are run with the best of intentions. These ones, not so much.
A federal police commander inside is accused by some of his own officers of protecting criminals.
Welcome to WatchMojo.com, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 10 countries with the most corruption.
No politician is truly honest enough to work for the good of the community. They're all looking for a way to make personal and financial gain.
For this list, we're taking a look at countries around the globe where political corruption is most notable. From government officials abusing their stations to corporations being granted frightening leeway, these nations serve as a reminder that power is not to be taken lightly. Number 10. Russia. Where to begin with the Russian Federation's leadership? For a start, the Russian government has been tied to several questionable incidents, such as the jailing of Moscow politician and critic Alexei Navalny.
Now, the White House has said it's deeply disappointed and concerned at today's conviction of a Russian opposition leader, calling it the latest example of a disturbing trend aimed at suppressing dissent.
Allegations have also been made of Russia's leadership buying votes for the 2018 FIFA World Cup bid, and of their close ties to construction companies who worked on the Sochi Olympics.
So it's definitely not anything to do with corruption, because I've read a lot about that in the media.
It's the venue is built on the very difficult terrain, and this is the main part of it.
Added to startling reports about the bribery rate for officials and the widespread nature of corruption, it paints a depressing picture of Russia. Number 9. Libya.
So they're showing us this graffiti on the walls saying Muammar Gaddafi is still here. They're saying that this is a sign that there's a lot of support still for the former regime, and they're blaming those supporters on the violence that took place yesterday.
This appears to be what has transpired for Libya. Caught up in the Arab Spring mass uprising that started in December of 2010, the country quickly descended into civil war. Operated by an interim government caught between rebels and loyalists to the old government, Libya has become vulnerable to outside forces.
عندنا تجربة حديثة، لكن الشعب لم يتوقع ما حدث الآن بأن يرجعوا أزلام.
Specifically, military figures and arms dealers are said to be taking advantage of the chaos, pitting citizens against one another in the ongoing violence, and stealing valuable resources.
Hospital staff have complained that patients have died because managers stole money needed to buy vital equipment.
Number 8. Myanmar. Also referred to as Burma, this country in Southeast Asia has its fair share of issues regarding corruption of power. For one, a 2015 profile indicated Myanmar had one of the most underdeveloped economies in the world.
We can eat, but we don't have 1 cent to spare.
This was attributed to a number of causes: long-time national stagnation, poor management on the government's part, and the fact that the military controls various key industries. These problems have driven some people to flee Myanmar.
Just across the border in Myanmar, a country under heavy sanctions where internally displaced people live in much worse conditions, they receive an average of $3 each per year.
Number 7. Turkmenistan. Becoming an independent nation after the collapse of the Soviet Union, Turkmenistan grew out of a power vacuum, which has since helped define power distribution in the country. For instance, Turkmenistan was ruled for 21 years by Saparmurat Niyazov, the president for life, known for bizarre acts such as renaming months as he saw fit. In the present, the Turkmen government has gone in a more sinister direction. They directly control the nation's natural resources and seemingly permit misconduct in institutions such as prisons.
Ты только дай, тебя сразу вытащат. Ты ничего не дашь, вот тебе сиди дальше. Умирай.
Number 6. Uzbekistan. Since gaining independence in 1991, Uzbekistan has had one president in power, Islam Karimov. The Karimov family and administration's degree of control over the country is more than a little disturbing at times, especially considering reports of Karimov's kin making deals with corporations. There have been allegations that the Uzbek government both attempts to enforce traditions and resorts to bribery when dealing with international companies. Combine that with Uzbekistan's questionable human rights record, and there's no doubt that many will be prone to thinking that the country's people deserve far better. Number 5. Iraq. Having experienced 2 invasions by the American military within a 15-year period, Iraq's destabilization isn't as surprising as the willingness of some to take advantage of the chaotic atmosphere.
There were billions spent on fixing the grid, but there's little to show for it.
Various groups fight for control amid questions of the Iraqi government's legitimacy, made all the more complicated by the appearance of ISIS.
خۆکوژانە شەڕەکەن وەکو شەڕەکانی کەنیە زۆر فەرقی هەیە لەگەڵ هەموو شەڕەکانی کەیە.
The people of Iraq have been engaged in protests with calls for reform and policy changes, but it remains to be seen if any good comes of it. Number 4, Afghanistan. The Afghan government lacks strong leadership because it struggled to keep groups such as Al-Qaeda from asserting control. Former President Hamid Karzai was reported to have accepted money from both the CIA and the government of Iran, with members of his family said to have gained influence through questionable means. From Afghanistan being one of the world's top producers of opium to claims of administration communication with the Taliban, issues of power abuse abound.
It starts from the street and it goes to the palace, but it is not what Afghan people want.
Number 3, the Sudan.
The leadership of our party is now in jail. They are being detained without charges, without trial, without investigation since the 29th of September.
Consider this. About half of Sudan's population lives under the poverty line. Various factors have contributed to this state of affairs, such as South Sudan splitting off and taking control of the nation's oil reserves. The main political party, the NCP, has implemented policies that impose strict limitations, exasperating Sudan's economic issues. Sudan has also seen years of racial and cultural conflict, making for one more problem preventing a shift in thinking. Number 2, North Korea. North Korea, also known as the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, is most distinctly not democratic. It's ruled by Supreme Leader Kim Jong-un as a totalitarian state. Reports of the populace not receiving food and fuel abound, matched by indications that the government focuses more on military spending. Stories have cropped up of people being sent to prison camps or executed for questionable reasons. To top it off, the nation's extreme security and censorship measures, such as real-time monitoring of text conversations, evokes terror no matter how one looks at it.
After they're done working here, they get sent back to North Korea. They spend a month in a reintegration camp to get all of the propaganda that they've missed.
Before we unveil our number 1 pick, here are some honorable mentions.
What I found is a civil service that doesn't have the means to do its work. I've been extremely shocked by that, and I've also noticed a lack of motivation from the staff. You don't feel that the people here want to serve their country.
This is a systemic failure. The system, the institutions, and the activities in this institution called Zimbabwe are rotten, right? And the person who should really take responsibility for this is the president.
The chairman of the UN Commission of Inquiry on Human Rights in Eritrea, Mike Smith, told the UN Human Rights Council that the country's poor human rights situation is to be blamed for the huge exodus of migrants from the Horn of Africa nation.
In a letter that reveals the depth of government corruption, South Sudan's President Salva Kiir is asking more than 75 former and current government officials to return about $4 billion in stolen public money.
Number 1, Somalia.
The security situation here is too volatile to hold proper presidential elections. It'll be the members of this parliament who will choose the next Somali president.
Reports suggest that Somalia is operated by a loose government, leaving warlords, companies, and other figures to use the unprecedented leeway to their own benefit.
According to the report, 7 out of each 10 dollars that has been collected or donated to Somalia as funds from foreign-friendly countries or international community has been misappropriated, mismanaged, embezzled, or used as a corruption.
Foreign aid is said to be taken by the government for their own use. Pirates are prone to attacking and claiming ships, and the country is tormented by the Al-Shabaab movement.
This specific field, the ground here, is the exact ground where Al-Shabaab used to conduct its execution. The execution of those they think we are going against the Sharia law.
With corruption on all sides, It appears that things need to change and power needs to shift into more respectable hands.
I don't think it is any question that there is significant corruption after 20 years of what can only be described as a terrible situation, as war, as conflict, as lack of institutions, lack of administrations.
Do you agree with our list? Which nations do you feel are most corrupt? For more investigative top 10s published every day, be sure to subscribe to WatchMojo.com.
Saddam Hussein has gone to elaborate lengths, spent enormous sums, taken great risks to build and keep weapons of mass destruction.